Go ahead. It looks like our recording is going. Let's start sharing and jump right in, right? Let's see. Stop that just for bandwidth. And then just a quick check. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thanks so much, Jacqueline. All right. Again, my name is Melissa, and I am with Igoe. We're talking open enrollment today, and most specifically, we're talking about spending accounts. And if you're not familiar, that's just Igoe's terminology for pre-tax plans where you can save money because you're not paying taxes on the dollars that go into these accounts. So let's go ahead. We're going to talk about what are spending accounts. Maybe this is new to you, or you've heard of an FSA before, but you're not really sure, why your coworkers are excited about it. Honestly, that's what we're going to talk about today. Like, what is there to be excited about? What can we do with these benefits? Why are people enrolling into them? And what benefits are offered? You have a medical care FSA, which is by the name, right, going to primarily reimburse medical related expenses and over the counter. Separately, you have a dependent care FSA, and this is strictly for daycare. So we'll talk about both of those in more detail. And then we'll also talk about, well, this is great. I can put money pre-tax into these accounts. I know what I can spend it on. How do I get the money out of the account, right? We want to make sure that you walk away knowing how to pay for services, how to get the money again out of these accounts so that you, are paying your providers or walking around with your benefits card. It's a MasterCard, and again, we'll talk more about that. We'll wrap it up today with some resources. And as Jacqueline mentioned, if you have questions, feel free to pop those into the chat or unmute. We can definitely just keep it casual today. So if you've got a question and we're on a slide and again, you want to jump in, please feel free to do that. Okay, first of all, what are spending accounts? Well, these are IRS tax plans that allow you to save money. So they're tax-free benefits where the IRS has said, hey, we know that everybody needs to have certain expense types, right? People are going to have health-related expenses. If you have children and you're working, you may have daycare expenses. And the IRS has said, we want to allow you an opportunity to save money on those expenses by not having to pay tax on the dollars that you use for those items and services. So we don't hear that often, right, from the IRS where they're like, hey, no, we want you to save money here, but it's a great opportunity to do that. That's the number one benefit of the spending accounts is, of course, saving money. It's also a great way that if you do know, maybe you've got some camps that are coming up for daycare, or you've got a larger ticket medical related item. Maybe you need some dental work in this new plan year, or you've been wanting to get LASIK surgery or a CPAP machine, these things that tend to cost a little bit more. Enrolling into a spending account is a great way to budget for those types of expenses and be able to get the items and the services and the care that you need. Another way that it does that is it reduces the need for you to come up with cash when you're actually making those purchases. We use our medical examples of like CPAP machine, because when you're enrolling in this plan, the money is going to be available to you at the beginning of the plan year. So if you need those prescriptions filled, or you have a service that you need to incur, you can do that right away. Okay. Just a quick example of the tax savings. So really what's going to happen, and we'll talk about this a little bit more later as well, but let's say you're listening to today's presentation and you're like, yes, I'm going to do this. You would kind of ballpark, right? How much money do I think I'm going to spend in a year? And that's going to come out, again, pre-tax of each of your paychecks. It gets divided up among all 24 pay periods in your plan year. And when you're having that money redirected on a pre-tax basis, you are saving the tax dollars. And we've got examples for you there on the screen. Really what that equates to is at the end of the year, you had more money in your pocket to spend on whatever you wanted. You did not pay that in taxes. Okay. Takeaways for today, and keep this in mind as we go through the following slides. This is not just for your expenses. Yes, you are the employee, you are the primary account holder, But keep in mind that this also applies if you're married to your spouse, and then also any tax dependents that you have. Usually that's going to be our children, but let's say you're taking care of a parent and they have become a tax dependent for you. Their expenses would qualify for you to pay for them using these tax-free accounts and tax-free dollars. The other thing we want you to keep in mind is, again, this is open enrollment. You might be considering a new insurance plan or changing your coverage there. Because this is a tax plan, not an insurance plan, even if you're not enrolling into any of the Gladstone benefits, or maybe you're not covering your spouse or your dependents, they're on a different plan, you can still run their expenses through the FSA, okay, through these spending accounts. So keep that in mind because there's some differences there when it comes to eligibility and enrollment. Let's go ahead, we're gonna jump into that first of the two account types we're gonna be talking about today, and that is the Health FSA. And again, what can you use this for? You've got a list, a partial list, I should say, very, very partial list, just to kind of get you thinking along the lines of, what would I pay for using this now account of money, this bank of money that I have set aside pre-tax? Well, how am I going to get it? What am I going to use for that? Again, partial list of those expenses is there for you on the screen. So maybe you do wear glasses, or good rule of thumb, if you are ever going to a doctor, medical doctor, dentist, anybody, and your insurance is covering a portion of that expense, right? But maybe you have an out-of-pocket responsibility. Maybe it's a copay, maybe it's a deductible, maybe it's co-insurance for a service. Those dollars that you're responsible for paying in partnership with your insurance company, you can be using your FSA to pay for those expenses. You can also pay for things like medical devices, menstrual products are eligible, other over-the-counter type items, PPE, again, dental, vision, orthodontia-related expenses, medical procedures. We do have a full list of eligible items and services that is linked on our website, which is goigo.com. If you've never enrolled in one of these plans before, or again, maybe this isn't for you, right? You're like, hey, I'm healthy. I only get my annual checkups. I don't have a copay for that. I don't use over-the-counter items. Totally fine. But does your spouse, do your children? We do have, in partnership with FSA Store, I'm getting a little ahead of myself, so let's jump to the next slide. In partnership with FSA Store, thousands of items that are available to you on a tax-free basis that are over-the-counter related. So what they estimate is that about $1,600 every year is what a household is spending on over-the-counter health products. And we've got some examples there. So again, even if you've never enrolled into this plan before, if you are looking at this, you're like, hey, I buy sunscreen every single year, right? We're getting into summertime. Let me make sure that my family is protected. You set aside some money into an FSA. You can test it out by just doing something like buying sunscreen, and you saved money because you didn't pay tax on those dollars that went into the account. Okay. I think this is typically where a lot of people, even if you're a big fan of an FSA and you've been enrolled in it for years and years and years, this is where there tends to always be opportunity to be saving even more on eligible items, is that over-the-counter category. So again, full list of eligible items is available on our website if you want to check out more. Now, I mentioned in the beginning, these are IRS plans, and it's wonderful that we don't have to pay taxes on these dollars, but there are some IRS rules that we want to make sure that you're aware of. One of them is that there's a defined period for when you're spending this money, right? So if I've given an example and you're like, oh my gosh, this is awesome, my kid needs orthodontia, let's go ahead, sign up for the FSA so we can pay for those braces on a pre-tax basis. Just know that those services, you would want them not to start until April 1st, and then they should be concluded by March 31st. Now, orthodontia, we understand, may span a couple plan years, so if that does specifically fall to you, feel free to reach out to our office and we can talk you through that. But for some of the other examples, if you're buying, again, maybe some therapeutic massage device or a CPAP machine, or you want that LASIK surgery I mentioned earlier, you fitting new glasses, all of those services and items should be purchased April 1st of this year through March 31st of next year. You can set aside into this account up to $3,200. So for that 12-month period, again, it's going to be divided up amongst each of your 24 pay periods that fall in that time period. Up to that $3,200, that's the new amount. It does change every single year. And again, I want to really stress up to that amount. So if you just want to set aside maybe $100 or $200, you can certainly do that. And that's just going to kind of get you testing the waters of what is this plan really like? What did I really save? Okay. If you think you're going to have more expenses, I would suggest that you even put aside up to $640, because that's the amount that even if you don't spend it in the plan year, it's going to roll forward for you. So if you haven't enrolled in one of these plans before because you heard of use it or lose it, right? If I don't use my money by March 31st, what's going to happen? Well, any amount 640 and below, it just carries forward for you. So even if you forgot that you were enrolled in the FSA, which will be hard to do because we do send you a monthly reminder with your balance. But let's say you completely forgot that you had money in there, not a problem. It's going to roll forward into the next plan year for you to still have access to and use to pay for items and services. Kind of flipping back to those IRS rules, yes, you need to use dollars within that April 1st through March 31st time period. Any receipts that you have, so let's say that you have been collecting, your receipts and you're going to submit them for reimbursement out of this account, you do need to have those in by June 30th of 2025. So your takeaway for today is, again, you have to use the money during the plan year, and then there's a period of time by which you need to submit for reimbursement. Okay. Moving on, switching gears entirely, we're going to start talking about our dependent care FSA. So if you are still kind of thinking, oh, I've got medical expenses for my dependents, that's wonderful. Jot them down, add them up to a total that you're going to put into that health FSA account, because the dependent care FSA is strictly for daycare. This is your tax-free way to pay for your daycare expenses that you are incurring while you're working. So if your kids are at daycare right now, or you dropped them off early at school and paid for that program, or they will be there late in an after-school program, those are the types of care that we're talking about. It's custodial care for children under the age of 13. And again, this is care that is happening while you're working, or if you're married, you and your spouse are working. Okay. Examples are there on the screen. I mentioned day camps. So once we hit summer vacation, right, a lot of day camps for a lot of us, before school care, after school care. If you do have a young child, maybe they're in preschool, you can be paying for those things and services on a pre-tax basis. Couple of things that we wanted to point out with this account, you can be paying for adult daycare if, again, maybe you've got an adult that's living with you, they are age 13 or older, and they're unable to take care of themselves. So if it's daycare, custodial care, this does not apply to medical care, unfortunately, but that if you need someone to watch that adult during the day, again, providing those daycare services, you can have that paid for on a pre-tax basis, again, if that individual is incapable of self-care. A couple of more examples, because we get this question a lot. So care can be provided by an individual, like a babysitter, as long as that person is over the age of 18, and they should be claiming that income on their taxes. So you're paying them for the services. You are then sending that to Igoe to be reimbursed from your dependent care account. And on their end, they should be claiming that as income. However, we're not reporting that in any way. And this is just a takeaway to say, we are just a part of that reimbursement process with the money going back to you, right? I mentioned before, adult daycare is for custodial services. This account, we want you to know a little bit about the mechanics of it with that health FSA. I mentioned, hey, that money is available to you up front. You can use it if you have a service that you need or an item that you are wanting to purchase. With the dependent care, money is available as you make those deposits through payroll. So as you're making a contribution, like a bank account, right? Make that contribution, it goes into your bank account. You can then be reimbursed that amount of money and up to 1 month in advance for service. So let's say April 1st, you sign up and you're making all those deposits for the summer day camps, right? But they're not happening until July, for example. You would send those in June to be reimbursed for those July services. You can also hold on to them if you wanted to, but the earliest you could send them in would be June. Now here at Gladstone, you guys have a fantastic program. I haven't seen anything like it, so that's a testament to your employer for sure. And that's the Gladstone Child Care Assistance Program. This is based off of your family household gross income. So if your income is less than $200,000, you're eligible for an employer subsidy of up to $5,000 when applying at open enrollment. I believe this is a separate link, separate application, and that's going to end up in the chat, but just wanted you to know that it does exist. The IRS maximum for dependent care contributions is $5,000. So just noting that you wouldn't be contributing over that amount personally. You would just have this money that's coming from Gladstone. So if your family income is, I'm trying to read the slide really quick here. So if you're a new hire, you're eligible for the subsidy on a prorated basis, or again, it's available to you here at open enrollment. More information on that and the link in the application will be in the chat. All right, we talked about the IRS rules that apply to that health FSA. I also want to touch on them for the dependent care FSA. You may recall with the health FSA, right, we had that maximum dollar amount of $3,200. You had a carryover, meaning that if you didn't spend all the money in the plan year, it rolls forward. The rules are a little bit different for our dependent or daycare FSA. In this case, you cannot roll money forward. However, you have extra time to use the money. Again, maximum here that you can put into this account for the plan year is $5,000. We all know daycare is very, very expensive. So usually you have used up that amount within your plan year, April through March. But if you needed it, let's say you had a change of care, you could definitely use an additional 2.5 months to make sure that you're incurring those expenses and getting the money from your dependent care plan by submitting that for reimbursement. Okay, so here we've got some key dates for you to keep in mind. And again, this is just takeaways. We will send you reminders as each of these dates approach. So if you're like, oh my gosh, how am I going to remember this? You can put it in your calendar now. That's a great idea. But we will be reminding you as you approach these dates. The first one is June 15th of next year. That's your last day to spend on this account. So if you've already zeroed out your balance by the time you get to, at any point in the plan, just know that June 15th will be the last day that you can actually spend on that account for daycare services. And then June 30th is when you would have to submit any receipts for reimbursement. So we've talked about both of our plans. We've done the overviews there. And again, this is the time that you're going to sign up during your open enrollment. And the big thing that you want to do is just kind of think about each of these accounts separately. What do I estimate my health expenses to be in that period of April 1st, coming up soon, through March 31st? Maybe take a look back at even your card activity and payments that you made over the year. You know better than anyone, for you, your spouse, and your tax dependents, what kind of expenses you incurred, right? Were there doctor appointments? Was there vision care? Was there dental care? Were there over-the-counter items that you want to set aside money for? You're going to take that total dollar amount, and that's where you're going to go ahead and make an election into Workday. You can select what you want coming out either per pay period or on an annual basis, and the system will calculate the other one for you. But that's what you're looking at. How much do you think you're going to spend in healthcare over that 12-month period? And I would base it off of what you spent over the last 12-month period, right? Once you make that election into Workday and we hit 4/1, the start of the plan year, April 1st, two things I want you to know. One, again, those health FSA dollars are available to you. So God forbid something happens, or again, you wanted to schedule that LASIK surgery that you've always dreamed of, fantastic, you can go ahead and get that scheduled. So election dollars are available to you at the start of the plan. The second thing is you're locked into that election amount. So unless something changes, like a qualifying life event, you have a baby, you get married, you cannot make changes to your health FSA election. You're locked in. Okay. Then think to yourself, do I have children under the age of 13? Do I pay for daycare? If you're saying no to all of those things, you're going to waive out of the dependent care FSA, right? Because if you had health expenses for your dependents, that falls under our health FSA. But if you do have daycare, then you can say, yes, I want to sign up into that dependent care FSA. You can look for the Gladstone Child Care Assistant Program information. If you don't qualify for that and you're going to be putting in your own dollars on a pre-tax basis, a couple of things for you to know. Again, reimbursement is going to come on a dollar in, dollar out basis. So as your contributions go in through the payroll, that can be reimbursed to you. And then secondly, if you do experience a change during the year, like I mentioned before, maybe your care changes, you switch providers, your child is no longer in preschool, they're now going to kindergarten and you need before school care. You can change the amount that's going into this account from your payroll based on cost and coverage changes. So it's a little more flexible than that health FSA. What we don't want is for you to, be in the plan, you're at a set amount, and suddenly you don't need daycare anymore for whatever reason, and now how do you get that money out, right? So if you do have any type of change, qualifying life event, cost and coverage changes, connect with your benefits department because they're obviously the experts in this area, and they'll walk you through how that may impact not only your spending accounts with Igoe, but other plans that you might be enrolled in. Okay. I did want to touch on, again, how do you get money out of these accounts? In the easiest way, you've got this account with Igoe, you know what you want to purchase with it. How do I do that? What are the logistics? Well, you can do one of two things. The first is that we're going to send you a benefits card that looks very similar to the card that you're seeing on the screen. So you can tell it's from Igoe. It's going to have an Igoe logo. If you have a card currently, and maybe it looks a little different than the one on your screen, that's fine. Check your expiration date. If it is not expiring anytime soon and you're re-enrolling in a plan, first, thank you. Secondly, just know that any new election that you put into Workday, it's going to load and be available for you on April 1st. Okay, so all that's going to automatically happen. The cards last for more than a year. So just, again, if you're enrolled in the plan currently, check that expiration date, hold on to your card because you can likely use it in the new plan year. But if you're going to be brand new, just know that a benefits card, it's a MasterCard, will be automatically ordered for you with your enrollment. So again, you're going to put that election into Workday. At some point, it's going to feed over to Igoe. We're going to process your enrollment on our end. You will get an email that your enrollment has been processed. Welcome. We're going to talk about setting up an account in just a moment so you can view all your information. A couple days later, you'll get another email letting you know that this card, your MasterCard to make payments to your providers, purchase items, that card is on its way in the mail to your home address. Okay, so you always get notified before, so you can be on the lookout. If you do want to order an additional card, maybe you're like, hey, my spouse needs one. They're always the one taking the kids to the doctor, or you just want them to have one, or you've got a college-age tax dependent that's living away from you. Again, this is a MasterCard, so you can definitely order an additional one. You would do that through your own portal once the plan year has started. We've got instructions for how you can do all that step by step. But just know that not everybody in your family needs a card like they do for an insurance plan. It's not an ID card. It is actually to make payments. Okay. Another thing I wanted to let you know is that some transactions, this goes back to that IRS plan, IRS rules kind of topic, some transactions do require that we see a copy of the receipt. So the way that this would happen, and it's a random selection, it actually happens less than 10% of the time across all of our participants. But what I want you to know is it is random. It's an IRS requirement that we periodically review transactions. There is nothing wrong with your account. And also, your provider has been paid. So at this point, we're just kind of coming in on the back end to make sure that we're doing our proper audit due diligence and making sure that all transactions are eligible in nature. The way that this happens is you might receive an email from Igoe that says, hey, you recently used your card, maybe at the dentist, because that tends to be a higher dollar purchase, right? All the instructions in the email or instructions will be included in the email for any steps that you need to take, but really the simplest thing for you to do, get an itemized receipt from your dentist. Best practice is just to get one every single time you go. You can keep it with your health records for the year, but get a copy of that itemized receipt. When you get this email, take a picture of that receipt with your smartphone camera, and you can upload that copy of your receipt through Igoe Mobile, our mobile app. We'll let you know that we received the receipt, the requirement's been met, and you're good to go. You do not have to send us a receipt on every single transaction, but I also don't want it to be a surprise if you do get an email that asks you about the transaction. We know that you had a transaction. We know the date, the dollar amount, even the merchant name. What we don't know is what was purchased. So kind of going back to our dental example, did you have a third cleaning for the year that you had to pay for? Was this a crown or other major service, or was it teeth bleaching? That unfortunately is not an eligible expense. So that's what the IRS wants us auditing for, things like that. Any questions when you get those, or if you get an email, you can, of course, reach out to our team and we'll walk you through that. Okay, one of the ways that you can reach out to our team is either by going online or through our mobile app. We'll have our phone number up here in just a moment, and honestly, that's the best way to reach out. But if you do want to check your account online or on the go, you certainly can. As we're going through open enrollment, I'm sure you're hearing from a lot of carriers talking about their apps. Here's what I always tell people. The functionality is pretty much the same. What you can do on the app versus what you can do online at goigo.com to manage your day-to-day account. So if you are downloading all the apps for all of your carriers, please add Igoe Mobile to that list. But if you tend to do these types of things at a desktop, right, you can definitely use the online experience to do everything that you need to do to manage your account. On both platforms, you can submit claims. You can order that additional benefits card that we talked about earlier. You can even sign up for direct deposit reimbursement. Let's say you don't use your benefits card for an expense, you choose to pay out of pocket. That's totally fine. You can pay out of pocket and then submit for reimbursement through the portal. That's the submitting claims portion. And then you can get reimbursed by signing up for direct deposit, basically linking your bank account to your Igoe account so that we know where to deposit your reimbursement money. That is a multi-day process, so I just didn't want there to be any surprises there either. We do need to know your bank account, and then you'll go through a validation process with some micro transactions. So again, just knowing, takeaway for today, you can sign up for a direct deposit. You do need to get that set up before we can actually deposit money into your bank account. Last thing, I mentioned that the platforms are pretty much the same when it comes to managing your day-to-day activity, and that is true, but by nature of us having a mobile app with us all the time, there are some additional bells and whistles on the Igoe mobile app specifically. So if you're out and about and you're wondering if a product is Health FSA eligible, there's a barcode scanner. You can also build out the app as much as you're comfortable entering in personal information. Maybe you link your health plan. Maybe you or a spouse is managing a chronic condition. You can put this information into the app and it will use your health plan and your location to find the lowest cost services in your area. So not only are you going to be using tax-free dollars to pay for those, but there could be services in the area that you didn't even know could save you money just because they're a lower cost service. An example of this could be an MRI. I think sometimes we don't know that we can shop around for some of these services. Even dental is another good example. But just knowing that, again, there are money-saving opportunities within the app itself. All right, thank you. You've all been very, very patient listening to me for this entire time, and did want to say that, yes, we have resources 24/7 with the website, with the mobile app that I just talked about. But again, the absolute best resource is going to be to give our office a call. So if you're you're here today and maybe you're thinking of a question, but you don't necessarily want to chime in, maybe it's personal in nature, you don't want to put it in the chat, reach out to our team. They are used to this. You can talk to them about eligible items and services. Hey, is this eligible? I'm trying to see if I should include the cost of it into my Health FSA election, or even types of daycare. Is this type of camp eligible versus that type? please feel free to reach out to us. Live agents are available. You've got the times there, Monday through Friday, 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. Pacific time. We do have 24/7 automated assistance. So again, if you're listening today and you're enrolled currently and you just wanted to see what's new, maybe for the next year, maybe you want to know what your balance is in your account right now and how long you have to spend, go ahead, you can use that automated assistance, or again, talk to a live agent and just confirm all of those details. All right, with that, that wraps it up for the big part of our presentation today. I wanted to open it up. Are there any questions that we can help with today?
Thank you so much, Melissa. There are actually a couple questions I received in the chat. The first one was, could you clarify for over-the-counter purchases, does state sales tax still apply for those purchases?
Yes, my understanding is yes, because really what's going to happen is the money that you're using is not taxed. However, at the point of that you're making that purchase, sales tax will still apply.
Okay, thank you. And then can you discuss a little bit more if someone's a current participant in the plan and they're using their Igoe debit card about towards the end of March, like the end of the plan year, and if they're still trying to use that card into the new benefit plan year, can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, and this could vary per account type. So we'll start with the health FSA. So the health FSA, if you're using your card, basically you have until March 31st, right, to use up all of those dollars. Whatever balance that you have remaining that would carry over into the new plan year, your card is still going to pull from that bucket, that balance, before tapping into your new election, if that makes sense. So we're going to make sure that we're using any old balances first with the card, and then we'll be using new balances for the new plan year. If you haven't used whatever money you have remaining at the end of the runout period, so June 30th is still talking about that health FSA. If you've got that $640 up to there, well, it's actually less for this year. Let's just say 600. I'm going to round all the way down. That money would then carry forward. So you've got until, again, March 31st is kind of a spending period. You can continue submitting for the reimbursement or using that money in the runout period, and then whatever is left is going to roll forward and become a part of your new 2024 election.